Indie games are often a wonderful group of underrated hidden gems carefully crafted by a development team that truly cares so deeply about what they've created. There always seems to be a certain freshness when playing a game like this, because you can truly feel the passion in every single game session. Today, though, I would like to talk about a certain indie title that was released for free on the Xbox 360 arcade in the year 2014. This game was none other than Charlie Murder. What is Charlie Murder, you may ask?
I'm the king of rock and roll, and I'm stomping on fortune and fame. I'm in the grave, I'm on a roll at the cemetery. Go, 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 kicking heads, I'm stomping bones at the cemetery. Go, go, go.
Initially, my friends and I didn't think too much of it, since we played any and all of the free games with gold at the time. In this case, though, it felt different. Admittedly, having played Castle Crashers for countless hours, I was no stranger to how addicting the beat-em-up gameplay loop could become. Charlie Murder, though, was the first time I'd felt this way in such a long time. The more I played, the more enthralled by the game I became. And what started as a way to pass time during my summer break became hours and hours of laughs, cheers, and formative memories that I will never forget. Charlie Murder was originally developed by SCA Studios, but it wasn't published by the Microsoft Game Studios for its port to the Xbox 360 until the year 2014. If you hadn't heard of SCA Studios prior to Charlie Murder, or even prior to this video, you wouldn't be the first. SCA Studios is of course an independent game development studio, who were responsible for a small number of successful titles at the time, but upon looking into their prior game releases, they were successful and equally as violent and edgy, so it's no surprise that they found their stride once again using this dark and grim atmosphere to their advantage. Predating Charlie Murder, though, SCA Studios had gained some popularity for their indie games of the Dishwasher series, but not quite to the scale that this game would eventually reach. Okay, so we've talked about the development and when the game was released, but what actually sets this game apart from anything else? Charlie Murder takes a different approach to the normal beat-em-up side-scroller games, as, of course there are classes and playstyles, but rather than dungeons and castles, this game is all through the scope of rock bands. For example, the main character and lead vocalist Charlie takes on the role of the Berserker, while other members of the band include Lester, lead guitar and mage, Tommy, the bass guitar and shaman, Rex, drummer and tank, and Kelly, the backup vocals and mesmer. These are the base characters that you're allowed to play when loading up the game, but there are other variations that you can unlock at a later point, though they are pretty much the same. Though it was for me, I understand that the prospect of a Rock Band RPG beat-em-up isn't enough to immediately entice every single player. But this game also differs from other titles in its atmosphere. If you played this game before, as a child, you may remember that at times it was pretty grim and serious. Shockingly violent, with lots of gore and blood. And if there's one thing that a 2000s game about a rock band fighting demons and giant rats in a graveyard needed more of, it was edge. Of course, Charlie Murder brings plenty of that, Even in the game's opening sequence, you are immediately tossed into the action and forced to fight your way through demons as you slowly float out of hell back into your physical form. This is of course quickly followed up by the apocalyptic nature of your surroundings, and so it suddenly becomes evident that this is no longer the world you once knew. Like many RPG games of its type, Charlie Murder had a leveling and progression system using skill points. Players could assign skill points to enhance certain skills and abilities as they progress, and while these elements alone can make for a good game and a fun experience, I believe Charlie Murder goes above and beyond with its captivating story. The story of this game is told through flashbacks, and in these we begin to understand why the situation is what it is. The conflict initially arose when Charlie decided to kick his former best friend Paul out of the band. Upon doing so, Charlie and his band, of the same name Charlie Murder, begin to find great success and amass a large following. The more success the band attained, though, the further into anguish Paul fell. This eventually led to Paul seeking the help of otherworldly forces in order to get revenge. In the present, Charlie and the band must fight their way through the monster-ridden cities in order to defeat Paul, now known as Lord Mortimer, in a battle of the bands. But it doesn't stop there. Charlie Murder actually does have two endings, known as the good and bad. I'll expand upon this later, but the ending you receive is based solely on recovering hidden relics throughout the playthrough. Upon opening Charlie Murder for the first time, many players may be unsure of what to expect, but I can assure you this uncertainty is forced to a screeching halt upon hearing the blasting sounds of punk rock swiftly and satisfyingly causing irreparable damage to your eardrums. I personally can't think of any better starting menu for this game, as it perfectly sets your expectations from this point forward. Which of course brings me to my next point, the soundtrack. You see, as I mentioned previously, this game places a heavy emphasis on its punk rock band culture. This theme is played out even more directly than you might have originally thought. Along with all the other incredibly enjoyable combat and RPG aspects this game possesses, of course, Charlie Murder also includes multiple rock band or Guitar Hero-esque rhythm sequences in which you get to enjoy this game's beautiful soundtrack. And while I suppose that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, come on man, you gotta listen to this. Expanding on what I said before, Charlie Murder of course shows little restraint in terms of its grim horror elements. From fighting your way out of hell to giant ghost monsters, Saw references, and even straight up drug-induced murder sprees, this game's pretty intense at times. I believe this all truly adds layers to the already grimy and fierce environment that you're forced into experiencing. It proves that, despite not being the villain, you're not exactly the hero either, as on multiple occasions throughout the game, you commit heinous acts in search of your end goal. At this point, I've literally kissed the developer's ass so hard that many would consider it a parasocial relationship by current standards. But pucker up, because I am not done kissing yet. I've mentioned skill points, the rock band, the story, everything else. The only thing that could possibly make this better than all of that is smashing shit with magic rock band powers, and oh my fucking god, they have that too. The combat within this game makes me feel things deep within, and while you could claim that's due to the vibrations of sound waves entering my body like a school auditorium, I would argue that this is all part of the game's charm. Not only are you able to find countless gear types that all influence the way you play, but each individual character has unique abilities suited to their role in the band. Remember the classes and members I mentioned before? Of course you do. Let's dive deeper. In place of mana and spells, Charlie Murder uses a synonymous system appropriately named Anarchy. As you progress the game and level up, you gain access to more abilities through the usage of tattoo shops. Each tattoo represents a new unique ability that your character can use. Honestly, I don't even know why we're surprised at this point. Like, Tattoo Shop rocks superpowers? Have we peaked? Where do we even go from here? As if everything else I mentioned previously wasn't enough, the developers gave the game multiple endings. During any given playthrough, certain relics or body parts can be found from mini-bosses, and equipping them for the final boss fight entirely changes who you fight and how the game ends. I know I mentioned the story being captivating already, but these endings provoke real emotion, even now. Okay, so I understand that everyone watching may not harbor the same feelings of excitement or emotion when viewing this game, and though I don't believe that this is a had to be there to enjoy it type, it's much more than the gameplay itself that I often relive. Even though 2014 was now 10 years ago, I find myself often reminiscing on times such as this. I was 11 years old when I played this game for the first time, so I find that I don't just think about the game itself, but the memories made with friends day after day as we beat up zombies and ninjas with musical instruments and firearms. Charlie Murder was truly one of my favorite games to come from the hundreds of Xbox 360 arcade releases, and I couldn't be happier I spent my time playing through it thoroughly. I hope that you enjoyed taking this little nostalgia trip with me as much as I did, and if you haven't enjoyed this game for yourself, maybe you should give it a try. The game is still available on Steam, but unfortunately has not received any backwards compatibility on the newer gen Xbox consoles. If you made it this far, I want to thank you for watching, and if you have any nostalgic game titles yourself, feel free to share them.